And at its core, I do believe that C7, the people that will advocate for medical assistance in dying, I realize that they are doing it from a position of compassion. And I will never question somebody who will say that is the reason why that they are advocating for C7. But we also need to realize that part of a compassionate response to people who are in that point in their life.
I apologize. The member will have 2.5 minutes to finish his speech after oral questions and 5 minutes of questions and answers. But we now have to go to statements by members. Déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Speaker, Gandhi once said, "The future depends on what you do today. Today I rise to honour someone who shaped our future, but what she did every day." Last month, our community lost Anna Kisil. Anna immigrated to Canada from Ukraine in 1990, and with her family built several businesses. Then she gave back to our community, to Canada, to Ukraine, and not just with her generosity, but with her leadership, eventually becoming president of the World Federation of Ukrainian Women's Organizations. Anna received many medals and awards for her service, including the Ivan Mazepa Cross awarded by the President of Ukraine. What struck me about Anna is how she supported younger people to ensure that they could make a difference for today and for the future. In fact, one time Anna fought for me and gave me an opportunity without which I would likely not be standing here today living my dream. And I am not alone. About that moment, Anna once said to me, she said, "I fought for you because I believed in your potential to make a difference." Anna Kisim not only made a difference, but she helped others to do so as well. And in so doing, made a monumental contribution to Canada, to Ukraine, to our community for today and for the future. Vichnaya Pamit.
The honourable member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank all those constituents who have reached out to me with their questions and concerns during this pandemic. Canadians have questions about the decisions being made by their governments and the plans to get their lives back. It is alarming to hear the pushback on citizens who are engaged and asking critical questions about the Prime Minister's own comments during a speech to the United Nations about a reset. By refusing to answer these legitimate questions and hiding behind name-calling, the Prime Minister demeans his office. To quote a recent article, labeling concerned citizens conspiracy theorists and claiming that those who accept the Prime Minister's very words given at the United Nations are succumbing to disinformation is sheer bullying. Our key to freedom and upholding democracy is knowledge, action, and civic involvement, end quote. I encourage my constituents to keep asking critical questions. We owe it to ourselves and future generations.
Honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in the House to mark the first reading of my private member's motion, M36, calling for the designation of August 1st as Emancipation Day in Canada. Our motion calls for the House to recognize the abolition of transatlantic slave trade in August 1st, 1834. As well, the motion aims to recognize the significance that August 1st holds as a historic celebration of freedom amongst Black Canadians. I want to acknowledge the support that this motion has received from Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard and Honourable Member from Hull Aylmer and the members of all-party Parliamentary Black Caucus. I want to commend the valuable insight I received from community voices like Rosemary Sadler from Royal Commonwealth Society, the Ontario Black History Society, and the Canadian Association of Social Workers. In closing, I'll call upon colleagues in the House to vote in favour of designating August 1st of every year as Emancipation Day throughout our wonderful nation.
L'honorable député de
The honourable member for Montcalm. Madam Speaker, Acadia has a national holiday to underscore its history, the history of a proud, unique, but mistreated people. Every year, even in Montcalm, I feel these celebrations of Acadia on the 15th of August, and I'm very proud of that. I am a Quebecer of Acadian origins, and I represent a riding in which there is the Nouvelle Acadie, which is where several Acadian families ended up. But this year, because of the insensitivity of the bureaucratic apparatus, Acadians will be deported again symbolically because they're being asked to move their national holiday to Canada Day or Quebec's national holiday if they want to be subsidized. That's a frontal attack on the dignity of a nation which deserves that its national holiday be respected. It's a day that celebrates the resilience and the pride and the struggle of the Acadian people. What is the Minister of Heritage waiting for in order to do something about this affront? The Honourable Member for Brome-Missisquoi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 27th of November, 114 Canadians were brought into the Order of Canada. That is one of the highest honorifics in the country. I would like to today congratulate one among them, Christian Bartomeuf, a resident of Brome-Missisquoi and owner of the Frillisburg Domaine Clos-Serragnan. Throughout his career, he made many contributions to the world of winemaking by creating new methods of cultivating strains that are tailored to the Quebec climate. He is especially recognized as the inventor of ice cider, a famous product that has won many awards internationally. He has brought Quebec products abroad and has brought Quebec much notice on the international stage. After a 40-year career, he has never stopped innovating and continuing to offer new gastronomical projects from our region. I would like to send all of my congratulations to this winemaker and entrepreneur who makes our region, Brome-Missisquoi, very proud.
For Tobique Mactaquac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On that starry night many years ago, there was a message of hope given in a very dark place of history, declaring, "Be not afraid, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. On this night a Savior is born. Glory to God in the highest, peace on earth, and goodwill to all people." If there's ever been a year that we needed some good news to pierce through the darkness of fear, doubt, and despair, it would be this one. May we embrace the peace that was promised all those years ago and overcome the uncertainty and fear we face today. May the goodwill that was expressed that night continue to be expressed through our lives, as has been so clearly displayed in the valiant efforts of our frontline workers, small business owners, truckers, grocers, farmers, and fish harvesters, and so many others, who have all made tremendous sacrifices and have together laid the foundation for our country's comeback. May the love, joy, peace, and hope that was brought that night many years ago be with you and your family this Christmas and throughout the coming year. On behalf of my wife, Crystal, and our family, I'd like to extend to every member of this House and to all Canadians a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year.
The Honourable Member for Pickering-Uxbridge.
Mr. Speaker, let's face it, 2020 has been the worst, but after hearing yesterday's announcement about vaccines rolling out, we know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, though, Christmas and the holiday season is still going to be difficult and different, and for some, it will be particularly difficult. So I'm asking the residents of my great riding of Pickering-Uxbridge and Canadians across the country to think this holiday season about helping to support local businesses by shopping local, or by, perhaps consider donating to local food banks, picking up a couple extra toys and donating to local toy drives. Because, Mr. Speaker, despite the difficulty this year, we can all, in the name of the holiday spirit, do our part to help make this year a little bit brighter for those who really need it. So, Mr. Speaker, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and good riddance 2020.
The Honourable Member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, it's wonderful to stand in the House again on behalf of the wonderful folks of the Long Range Mountains, and I want to thank them and all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians for doing their part to control the spread of COVID-19 in our province. And as my colleague has said, the light is at the end of the tunnel. But today, as we take time to talk about church bells and sleigh bells and jingle bells, I want to speak of another bell, Charlotte Bell. Many of us know Charlotte as the CEO of TIAC, the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. We know her passion for the tourism and hospitality sectors, and we know that passion only grew during the pandemic. Her forward thinking and outright love for this industry, its leaders, workers, and clients, many of us have seen firsthand. We have seen the results of her hard work and planning among the many winding roads that she's traveled throughout our country from coast to coast to coast. Charlotte is now traveling along another road, and wherever this road leads, I know her passion for tourism will always be with her. So my friends, here and at home in the riding of the Long Range Mountains, when you hear the bells of the holiday season this year, I want you to pause and reflect. Be safe, treasure those near and dear to you, and may the road that we all travel on lead to a magical place. Merry Christmas.
The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, this summer, Canada lost a true friend and ally. Jim Phillips was the president and CEO of the Can-Am Border Trade Alliance for almost 3 decades. His legacy embodied this in the strong relationship and organization that forged between Canada and the United States. Under Jim's remarkable leadership, the essential decision makers from both countries could gather in one room and always left the game plan to fix any border irritant with real results following closely along. Without Jim's hard work, among many other things, we would not have Nexus cards or a border that flows reliably and safely as the 49th parallel. Jim will be greatly missed by all of us engaged on Canada-US issues, and we'll work tirelessly to keep up the work that Jim dedicated the last 30 years of his life to. Thank you, Jim. Rest in peace, my friend.
The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, this past Saturday, Lisa and I were very saddened to learn of the passing of our dear friend, the Honourable Ron Irwin. At the local level, he served as a school trustee, city councillor, and mayor. In 1980, Ron was first elected as a Liberal member for Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie and served as parliamentary secretary to then Justice Minister Jean Chrétien. Ron was elected again for a second term in 1993 and served as the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. Irwin was invested into the Order of Canada, a recipient of the Queen's Jubilee, and I had the honour to present him a Canada 150 pin for his exceptional public service career spanning over 35 years. Ron served not only our community, but our nation with strong conviction and persevering efforts. He served as Canada's ambassador to Ireland and as a consul general to Boston. I was blessed to have Ron as a friend and a supporter. Nobody campaigned like Ron. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, dear friend. Lisa and I offer your condolences, our condolences to wife Marg and his family and so many friends. And thank you from all constituents in Sault Ste. Marie for your years of service.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, I just received hundreds of surveys back from my constituents raising concerns about poor internet and cell phone connectivity in our riding. The ongoing frustrations of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially with restrictions to work and school from home, have amplified their exasperation and demands for better service. Back in 2017, only 37% of rural households had access to the sufficient internet speed identified by the federal government, compared to 97% of urban households. But now in 2020, as more people are working, studying, and streaming at home, our already unreliable connections have worsened. This Liberal government has repeatedly promised to improve internet connectivity, but has failed to deliver. This is a slap in the face to my constituents who pay more to get less and often buy additional equipment like boosters just to get 5 megabytes per second downloads if they're lucky. Canada's Conservatives are demanding concrete action from this government to connect rural Canadians and eliminate these barriers to equal opportunity in today's digital economy and society.
On la députée de Bellechasse, les Etchemins.
The honourable member for Bellechasse, les Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals love to parade around the Davie shipyard and make all sorts of promises, but after the photo op, they leave and there's nothing left for the workers at the shipyard or for all the suppliers. And yet, the Coast Guard and the Navy have urgent needs, and only Davie has the capacity and availability to deliver these new ships here in the country within an appropriate timeline. The Liberals are claiming that the Davie shipyard is integrated into the naval strategy. But because of them, ferries are being built abroad. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals need to take action. They need to do something for the Davie shipyard by Christmas. They need to stop ignoring one of these incredible shipyards that are our pride as Canadians.
Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, a few days ago we lost Dr. Myler Wilkinson, former instructor of literature and peace studies at Selkirk College in Castlegar. Myler was an accomplished scholar, an award-winning author, and an educator whose students often said he was the best teacher they ever had. Now, the West Kootenay has long had a strong vein of peace activism. There are the Doukhobors, whose motto is toil and a peaceful life. There were thousands of American opponents of the Vietnam War who found a haven in the Kootenays in the 60s and 70s. Myler and his wife Linda had the brilliant vision to build on this core of peace activism to form the Meir Centre for Peace Studies at Selkirk. It has flourished since 1999, providing courses on transformative justice and peace studies. I'm proud to represent a riding with such a brave and bold history of peace activism. We will all miss Myler, but we have the legacy of the Mir Centre to carry on his passion for peace on earth and goodwill to men.
L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, 30 years ago yesterday, Jean Duceppe, one of the greatest Quebec artists, passed away. He was an actor and a host, and he made a great impression on TV, radio, at the cinema, and at the theatre. He had many memorable roles, such as my Uncle Antoine in Death of a Salesman, Charbonneau and the Chef, and The Family Plouffe. He also founded a theatre company that still bears his name. He was an ardent defender of Quebec. He loved his people and left a remarkable cultural legacy. He was also my grandfather. He had many memorable one-liners. Towards the twilight of his life, I remember a particularly remarkable thing that he said, and it resonates just as powerfully as when I was a child. Quebec is our only country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, it's been nearly 2 weeks since the Minister of Health and I had exchanged a debate on the floor of the House here about ending the gay blood ban. This government was reminded that it's been 5 years since the Liberals promised not to study and research the issue anymore, but to end the discrimination and stigma that gay men face in this country. The Minister is aware of a safe, science-based solution that asks questions based on sexual behaviour and not sexual orientation. The Canadian Medical Association and the All Blood is Equal campaign are calling and backing this campaign. The time for talk and excuses is over. Gay men want to make a difference. We want to be treated the same way everybody else is. We can get this done. All I'm asking for, Mr. Speaker, is the Liberals to keep the promise that they made in the past 2 election campaigns. All parties are united in this. Let's make history and get this done. Not in months and years from now, but now. Let's make the change that's long overdue for gay men in this country. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert.
First, let me wish you, all my fellow parliamentarians, and all those who work on the Hill as happy a Christmas as possible. But just as importantly, I would like to wish my fellow constituents in Brossard and St. Lambert a healthy, safe and loving holiday. The year is drawing to a close, and I think we can't wait to see it in the rearview mirror. What immense challenges and real threats to our security and well-being 2020 has presented to us. I hope during this holiday season we will have the opportunity to find solace in the warmth of our families and to take a moment to appreciate what we do have. This global pandemic has profoundly changed the way we live. No one has been immune from both the personal and social effects of the COVID-19 virus. But we have not been alone in the face of this new threat either. Many sacrifices have been made by everyone, and we have been able to adapt our behavior and our routines. We have all had to face these challenges, and we are slowly seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Once again, I would like to wish you all a Christmas as merry as the circumstances will allow, and like you, I look forward to better days in 2021. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister tried to criticize us for asking questions on the CanSino deal. It turns out we weren't the only ones with questions, Mr. Speaker. The Globe and Mail is reporting that the government's own vaccine task force recommended against working with CanSino. The Prime Minister has said repeatedly that scientists were guiding the government's decision with respect to the vaccine. Why did this government make an exception for the Chinese pharmaceutical giant CanSino?
The Honourable Minister.
From the very beginning, Mr. Speaker, we stepped up for Canadians. We reached out to procure potential vaccines from every possible source. We were not going to close any door that would maybe help Canadians. We ended up, therefore, with 7 contracts signed with a diverse group of the top vaccine manufacturers in the world. We will continue to ensure we're doing everything we can, based on the best advice of experts, to get these vaccines to Canadians so we can get through this pandemic once and for all.
Chef d'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The first door the Prime Minister opened was with China. We also found out last week the government had been briefed on the security risks involving the Chinese company CanSino. The Prime Minister said that news report was making things up. Now we learn that the scientists agreed with the security experts on CanSino. So if the security experts were against partnering with China and the scientists were against partnering with China, why did the government partner with China?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we signed 7 contracts with different vaccine producers from around the world in order to deliver vaccines reliably to Canadians. And we looked for all partnerships, including something that was a successful partnership in developing an Ebola vaccine a number of years ago with CanSino. That one didn't pan out for a number of different reasons, but what we are left with is 7 extraordinary contracts that have secured more doses per capita for Canadians, potentially, than any other country in the world.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we lost 5 months on the China deal that the Prime Minister said didn't pan out. We didn't prioritize domestic vaccine production. The government didn't listen. Instead of pursuing a made-in-Canada solution that was actually put forward by their own experts, the Liberals signed off on a partnership with CanSino. They put millions into a facility for that partnership that they were told wasn't ready for vaccine production. Why did this Prime Minister favor a made-in-China solution instead of the made-in-Canada solution their own experts were demanding?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way we leaned on our experts, on the immunity task force, on the vaccination task force, to make recommendations on what we should do to ensure a solid supply of potential vaccines to Canadians. And that advice actually led us to being in the enviable position of having more doses from more companies than just about any other country. And we are hopeful to be receiving our first vaccinations next week. This is what a government that listens to experts and works hard for Canadians has been able to deliver.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, last week the New York Times illustrated how easy it was to access child pornography on an adult site. And they continue their activity because the federal government isn't doing anything about it. This company has its head office in Montreal. When will the Liberal government open an investigation onto this issue to protect our young people? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working actively on the creation of new regulations to force online platforms to remove illegal content. That includes hate comments, child sexual exploitation, and violent or extremist content. Our approach will ensure that illegal content will be removed quickly, the platforms will be monitored, and victims will have access to a quick, transparent, and independent process. We are working with our international partners on this initiative and will be putting forth the regulations as soon as possible.
The Opposition.
En masse, des députés.
In March, Canadian senators and MPs from 4 political parties sent a letter to the Minister of Justice calling for steps to be taken to deal with these companies producing pornographic material. With respect to age, verification of age, and the removal of content. When will the government take action to protect our young people from sexual exploitation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we are working actively at present on measures for new regulations to force online platforms to withdraw all illegal content, be it sexual exploitation of children, child pornography, or hateful comments. We will always be there to protect Canadians, and we are working on measures to put in place. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and allow me to say quickly that the government has our support for all measures to put an end to sexual exploitation of young people.
On a different topic now, we know that the government could have had vaccines made in Canada and could have had adequate facilities. We know that it could have done without. It could have synchronized its steps for approval. It could have taken a number of steps, but it didn't do so. To hide it under the carpet, the government is buying 250 million doses for Quebec. That means some 30,000 doses. We can't even look after seniors in, say, Sherbrooke, for example. When are we going to take more action that's more than just cosmetic? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the beginning, we have been working with scientists and experts who've made recommendations on how to protect Canadians. On their advice, we signed more contracts with more companies developing a vaccine than any other country, and we have secured scores of doses of vaccine more than any other country. Vaccines could arrive as early as next week. Production is underway, and we will be able to vaccinate many Canadians in the start of 2021. The Honourable Member, regardless of what's already been done, it wasn't done well enough because there are delays. Now, with respect to the choices of the government, it's a false and dangerous sense of security. But only 125,000 people will be vaccinated, so that's inadequate. Can the Prime Minister talk about the plan and raise the issue on Thursday and come through with increased health transfers as the Premiers are requesting? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working to deliver vaccines as quickly as possible, and it, of course, depends on production by companies that will be providing these vaccines. With respect to the premiers, I have worked with them for the months now to deliver billions of dollars in assistance for the health care systems, alongside the armed forces and the Red Cross. We will ensure that everything during the crisis, that the provinces have everything they need from the federal government. I'm keen to.
Member for Burnaby South.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians were encouraged to hear that a small quantity of vaccines would be coming from Pfizer, but that's the problem. It's difficult to transport it, to store it, and we're very concerned for our seniors. They need to have access to the vaccine. The Moderna vaccine can help. What is the plan for the Moderna vaccine to protect our seniors? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have worked with all vaccine companies to ensure that we obtain doses quickly in compliance with all rules. There are 4 companies that are currently being assessed, including Pfizer and Moderna. We hope that the Pfizer vaccine will arrive shortly, and Moderna in the months to come. We know that it will take different types of vaccines to help everyone, and that's why we're confident that we will be in a position to vaccinate 3 million Canadians in early 2021. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians were encouraged by the announcement of a small quantity of Pfizer vaccines being available in Canada. But the Pfizer vaccine presents some problems. It's difficult to store and difficult to transport, and it won't be available for people who live outside of major Canadian cities. And I think about the outbreaks in Indigenous communities and rural and remote communities and the fact that they won't have access. The Moderna vaccine is promising in solving some of those problems, but we want to know what the plan is. So what is the plan for the Moderna vaccine to provide access to people who live outside of major cities?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Pfizer is in the news right now because we are expecting to see the first deliveries of those vaccines as early as next week, and we can start working on the delivery of those vaccines, which are logistically more complex. Moderna vaccine is a somewhat more simple vaccine to transport and to administer. That is why we are counting on the Moderna vaccine to be able to reach further off communities and northern Canadians. That's why we are working very closely with Moderna to ensure that we get those doses to them as quickly as possible. As I said, we're expecting millions of people to be vaccinated, the most vulnerable.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, the finance minister has a big idea, and it involves your bank account. She's very worried that Canadians are saving too much, even though those same savings are lent out to and invested in other job-creating businesses. So now she's looking for ideas on how the government can act to unlock those savings of Canadians. Does the government really believe that holding Canadians upside down by the ankles and shaking their change loose is a stimulus plan?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
The Conservatives are misconstruing my words. It almost makes me wonder if they're doing it on purpose. The fact is, there is nothing dystopian or even very complicated about the idea of a preloaded stimulus. We all know that local small businesses are the heart of our economy. We all also know that because of physical distancing, we are unable to patronize them now. That is why, as soon as it is safe for our economy to fully reopen, our government is looking for ways to encourage Canadians to support our local small business.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Preloaded stimulus. It sounds like she wants to use Canadian savings as her own preloaded credit card. But this is no surprise from a government that's running the biggest deficit in the G20 by far, even with the worst unemployment other than Italy and among the higher rates of COVID mortality. But now the minister says she has no fiscal anchor. Instead, she has fiscal guardrails that will one day be attached to a fiscal anchor. Won't the anchor at the bottom of the sea pull those guardrails off the edge of the cliff?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite still seems to have some trouble understanding why it's good economics to support our small businesses and to encourage Canadians to do that. So let me quote someone he might find a little more simpatico. Ontario's Conservative Premier Doug Ford. Here's what he's had to say. Now more than ever, we need to support our own. During COVID-19, business supported communities and healthcare workers. Now it's time for us to support them as consumers. I couldn't agree more.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lafiore. Mr. Speaker, after days of being questioned by our party, the Liberals acted in haste to come up with some vaccines for Canadians. And it's only a tiny fraction of what's needed. Now, we know that the armed forces will be involved in the vaccination effort, including several from CFB Bagotville. How will the government distribute the vaccines to the members of the Canadian Armed Forces who fall under federal jurisdiction? The Honourable Minister.
Every step of the way, we've been transparent with Canadians as we secured the most doses per capita, as we had the most diverse portfolio for Canadians, as we planned with provinces and territories to distribute vaccines so they can deliver on their immunization responsibilities. And, Mr. Speaker, we'll work with the federal organizations under our jurisdiction as well to ensure that everyone has access to a vaccine.
The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, things are going so well in Canada that several provinces are reviewing lockdown procedures. We won't be able to talk about economic recovery until people have immunity. Canadians deserve certainty, clarity, and competency from their government. When will we develop herd immunity, and how long will we continue to be in lockdown? The Honourable Minister.
Important that all Canadians look forward to immunization and indeed plan to get immunized when those immunizations are proven to be safe here in Canada. I want to thank the regulators at Health Canada who are working so hard to ensure that no matter what vaccine arrives, that it will not be deployed until it's proven to be safe. And, Mr. Speaker, I think one of the things that will happen is ensuring that we don't share misinformation with Canadians about the risks of vaccination.
Honourable Member for Lakeland. The honourable member just want to activate her microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Justice Minister said, quote, "We expect law enforcement to enforce Canada's laws." But a Canadian-based website has videos and images of people under 18 and children being exploited, abused, and raped. Videos are re-uploaded and stay on the website for years and years. The minister said the Liberals take gaps in the law seriously. So does the Minister for Public Safety think this is a so-called gap that needs to be fixed right now?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure the member opposite that the sexual exploitation of children is among the most heinous of crimes, and we've been working very hard to ensure that we support law enforcement in every way with resources, not just for the RCMP, but for provincial and municipal police services as well, to make sure that they have the resources and the tools and authorities they need to combat this most heinous crime. And I've reached out to the RCMP and asked them to speak to the police of jurisdiction, in this case in Quebec, in the city of Montreal, and in the province of Quebec, to ensure that they have all the help that we can provide.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But this is still happening right now. Some private sector companies are taking steps to protect youth and victims of abuse. 3 major payment processors say they will or have cut off the website's ability to monetize child abuse. Victims say the website is, quote, "making money off the worst moment in my life," and, quote, "became my trafficker." Experts say there's more than 62 million pieces of child abuse online. How many more children will be harmed so heinously before these Liberals act and this is stopped?
The Honourable Minister.
As a father of 3 girls and a legislator, I find profoundly inhuman the content of these platforms. This is why our government has been working for months with experts, non-governmental organizations, and foreign governments to bring forward legislations to this House at the beginning of 2021. This new regulation will require online platforms, not just websites, to eliminate illegal content, including hate speech, child sexual exploitation, and violent or extremist content. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy de Joliette.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the premiers will be meeting on Thursday to discuss health transfers. We're seeing the real consequences of federal underfunding in our hospitals. Now, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the official opposition is heckling again. He continues to heckle.
Chamber. We'll go back to the. Nous allons. Alors, la traduction, l'interprétation.
The interpretation isn't working?
Order. Order. We can't continue on. C'est pas possible pour continuer.
We can't continue on until the noise is reduced. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. While all of the premiers are meeting on Thursday to discuss health transfers, we're seeing the real consequences of federal underfunding in our hospitals. Because Ottawa's not doing its share and its part, Quebec is forced to make heartbreaking choices. Doctors are forced to choose who can be treated because there isn't enough staff to treat everyone. And Quebec is forced to cut its operating room capacity to 50%. It could drop to 30% quickly. On Thursday, will the government finally announce a sustainable increase in health transfers? The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are supporting Canadians and the provinces. We have announced $19 billion under the Safe Start Recovery Program to help recover from COVID-19. The provinces must invest this funding to increase their capacity, their testing, contact tracing, and data collection. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, for every $10, only 15 that the federal government invests, only 15% goes to health. Now, every day we're seeing the COVID numbers, but what we don't see are people who don't have access to care. The number of people who can't have surgery or receive cancer treatment. The number of people on waiting lists whose quality of life is deteriorating because of a shortage of healthcare workers, and that's what happens when healthcare is underfunded. One-time assistance won't help them. When is the government going to realize what's happening and increase health transfers in a sustainable way. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, throughout this pandemic, the federal government has been there for provinces and territories. In fact, 8 out of every $10 spent on responding to COVID-19 has been spent by the federal government. We've been there for provinces and territories, Mr. Speaker, with direct transfers for things like testing, contact tracing, data management, but also to help with crisis through the investment of the Canadian Red Cross to go into nursing homes and support right on the ground to help bring down outbreaks. Mr. Speaker, we'll be there for provinces and territories. They need to spend the money to get ready for whatever comes next.
Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Experts have testified about the devastating impact COVID-19 lockdown has had on the mental health of Canadians. Alcohol and substance abuse is exploding, so is domestic violence, opioid deaths, and suicide. Some have described these impacts of COVID lockdown as epidemics in and of themselves. With Christmas fast approaching, a time when mental health is always an issue for many, and COVID lockdown still in place, does the government feel it's done enough to prevent a second wave of suicides, domestic violence, and overdoses over Christmas?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, for a very long time, we've been focusing on mental health and substance use in this government. In fact, we did more as a government than that previous government ever did on the issue of substance use. And I'm proud of the work that we've done, Mr. Speaker, to treat people who use substances like human beings. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you this. We have invested through COVID-19 by direct transfers to provinces and territories, by setting up Wellness Together, a federal support to overlay that transfer to provinces and territories. I would encourage all Canadians to visit wellnesstogether.ca to receive support and access to professionals to help them through this difficult time.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Tens of thousands of Canadians have been separated from immediate family members for months due to COVID lockdown and border closures, and there are 4 million Canadians who live alone. For some of these people, sitting alone through Christmas lockdown might exacerbate mental health issues. For Canadians who live alone and who are desperate to reunite with family during the holidays for the sake of their mental health, what advice is the federal government offering them on how to safely reunite and mitigate the mental health impacts of isolation while preventing the spread of COVID-19?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way, we've asked Canadians to sacrifice tremendously. We know that. All across the world, in fact, people are sacrificing to contain COVID-19 and protect their loved ones. And I don't underestimate that sacrifice, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, I thank Canadians for protecting each other, for protecting their communities. There is light at the end of the tunnel, though. We do have successful vaccines coming on board. And Mr. Speaker, I will remind all Canadians that if you need help and you don't have access in your own particular jurisdiction, please reach out to wellnesstogether.ca of both official languages and translation into 200 others.
Deputy Desnathy, Mississippi, Churchill River.
The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, during the 2015 and 2019 elections and as recently as this summer, the Prime Minister repeated his now broken promise to lift all drinking water advisories by March 2021. The government has used COVID as cover, but that does not hold up under scrutiny. The member for Kenora has been in contact with several Indigenous community leaders in his riding who've been able to continue with infrastructure projects, including water, during the pandemic. Will the government admit that the clean drinking water promised to Indigenous people was empty from the beginning?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are not backing away from our commitment to ending all long-term drinking water advisories to First Nations on reserve, but instead making a more profound commitment to the long term. In every community with a long-term water advisory, there's a project team, an action plan, and people dedicated to lifting it. And last week we announced $1.5 billion to accelerate the access to clean water in the short and the long term, as well as the stability necessary to ensure this occurs not only by spring 2021, but after that. While we can't underestimate the impact of COVID-19 on long-term drinking water timelines, we're optimistic.
The Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week, instead of owning up to his own failure to Indigenous communities, the Prime Minister hid behind this minister and forced him to take responsibility for not meeting this March 2021 promise. When it was time for an election promise, the Prime Minister was more than glad to be in front of the camera and center stage and to be in the spotlight. Now that this promise has been broken, he is nowhere to be found on this. Mr. Speaker, that is not leadership. How can Indigenous people trust the words of this Prime Minister and his government?
The Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me complete what I was about to say. While we can't underestimate the impact of COVID-19 on long-term drinking water timelines, we're optimistic that by spring 2021, the number of communities under long-term drinking water advisories will be down to 12. We're committed to working with these communities in partnership for the long term. That's what the announcement last week of $1.5 billion to communities was about. And yes, that is my responsibility to get it done as a Minister of the Crown.
Member for Victoria.
Today's report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer shows that any scenario where the Trans Mountain pipeline would be profitable is a fantasy. Construction costs have soared to over $12 billion, and any additional climate action, like this government's own net zero legislation, will mean the project isn't viable. Yet the Prime Minister is determined to push ahead with this environmental and economic disaster. When will the Prime Minister stop selling this fantasy, throwing away billions of dollars, and instead make the investments we need to fight the climate crisis and create good, sustainable jobs?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are many factors that go into determining whether a pipeline is necessary, such as contractual support, shipper choice, the nature of the markets that would receive the products delivered by the pipeline. TMX is a good project that has created more than 7,000 jobs for Canadians. There is a very strong business case for the project, and construction will continue. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Not only is the Liberal pipeline wasting public funds, but their government is a laggard in terms of the climate crisis. In terms of the climate crisis, the Liberals are clearly failing. Canada is 55th out of 60 countries. It's embarrassing and irresponsible. In Quebec, a petition with 100,000 people signing it has just been tabled, and the Quebecers show that they want a lasting and green transition. When will the Liberals take the climate emergency seriously and invest in electric transportation and renewable energy? The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister. We've taken many measures nationally to address the climate emergency, and of course it's something we are aware of. We have to do more, and in coming weeks we are going to do more with a new plan to address climate change.
For Scarborough Agincourt.
As we continue to see record-breaking number of cases in regions across Canada, I know that families in my community of Scarborough Agincourt are concerned about the safety of their loved ones of all ages. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that 249,000 doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccines will be available in Canada before the end of the year. With hope on the horizon, what would the Minister of Health say to reassure families, not just in my riding, but in communities across Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her very important question. Of course, the arrival of vaccines in Canada is a very hopeful symbol that the light is indeed at the end of the tunnel. And I know that families all across the country are worried about their loved ones, and I thank them for the incredible efforts they're taking to keep each other safe. Work is well underway with provinces and territories to make sure that we have a quick and efficient way to deploy these vaccines. I want to thank the provinces and territories for working at all levels to make sure that when vaccines arrive in Canada, we can deploy them.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg au Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we all read or heard fairy tales in our childhood. The most recent one is called Frank Baylis and His Liberal Friends. The story is simple but shocking. But the problem is that the main characters deny being friends, even if their actions show the opposite. And my question is simple. Did the minister award other contracts to shell companies like FTI, a company that was only created a few days before signing a $237 million contract for friend Frank Baylis? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the question. To date, we received more than 3 million ventilators for Canadians. And this is very important for our effort for all Canadians, for people in hospitals. It's very important, Mr. Speaker.
Canadians, our government has stocked up on PPE and all
all sorts of medical equipment. Businesses from across this country have stepped up, and we are so grateful to those businesses and Canadians at large.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg or Saint Charles. Mr. Speaker, Baylis's ventilators weren't even approved by Health Canada when the government awarded the contract. And what's more, Baylis needed money and had to finance its buildings because it had issues. Did the government pay twice the price for these ventilators because Frank Baylis had financial issues? And is this why they hid the extra in the overall price? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. That's an interesting story, Mr. Speaker, but that is not at all the case. After an in-depth examination by a group of independent experts, Mr. Speaker, we awarded a contract to FTI. It is for Canadians and hospitals, Mr. Speaker, that we did this, and we are here for Canadians. Thank you.
For Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give the government the opportunity to clarify its policy on China. I have a very simple question and hope that it will be answered. Has the government already put in place its new framework on China? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for giving me the opportunity to talk about our policy with China. Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are watching at home understand that our relationship with China is both complex and multidimensional, Mr. Speaker. Canadians at home understand that China of 2020 is not the China of 2016, and that our strategy needs to evolve with the China which is evolving, Mr. Speaker. As I've said many times in committees, the member asked me many questions. Our policy is based on our interests, on our values and principles, including human rights, and on building global partnership and abiding by international rules, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, that answer demonstrates why this government's policies are such a mess. They can't answer a simple question. 2 weeks ago, the minister appeared in front of committee and gave contradictory messages. The Canadian press reported that the government had already put in place its new framework on China. The National Post at the same time reported that the government had yet to put in place this new framework. If we can't figure it out and the media can't figure it out, how on earth is anyone else, including China, supposed to figure out this government's policy on China?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's very clear. Canadians have figured out, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the opposition have not. But I can assure that Canadians understand that China of 2020 is not China of 2016, Mr. Speaker. And after 2 hours and a half of questioning, if they don't answer yet, I think they have a problem, Mr. Speaker, because Canadians understand.
The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, the court ordered the government to correct MAID legislation before December 18th, but the bill is paralyzed. The Liberal prorogued Parliament for 6 weeks, so they are to blame if time runs out. Nevertheless, the hostage-taking of this work by the religious right is deplorable. There are vulnerable people waiting who are suffering. Will the government ensure that C7 passes in time without a gag order? Or does it think that the government, that the conservative leader needs to call his fanatics back to order? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we were very disappointed to see the Conservatives pursue their tactics to obstruct the legislation on MAID. We know, Mr. Speaker, that the large majority of Canadians believe that medical assistance in dying is a fundamental human right. The deadline was imposed by the Superior Court of Quebec, and the Conservatives are trying to deny the urgency of the situation. It's a serious situation, and the leader of the official opposition has to show his leadership in this respect. The Honourable Member for Laurenti-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, the hostage-taking of work by the Conservatives' religious right on MAID should serve us as a lesson. It shows why religion must be kept as far away from government affairs whenever possible. State secularism is fundamental, and this value must be protected. But yet, right now, the federal government is involved in a court challenge to fight state secularism in Quebec. Will it learn a lesson from what's happening today and stop taking Quebec taxpayers' money to do what? Challenge the secularity of Quebec. The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, we have a very clear position on this. What I can tell you is that we're not participating in the court challenging Quebec in that trial. That is a case where Quebecers are challenging this legislation before the courts. That's their right, and we're following this case closely.
For Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, during this pandemic, Canadians are ordering more and more through home delivery. But what they aren't able to order are all the fantastic beer, wine, and spirits made by our great Canadian producers. Liquor monopolies hide behind outdated rules to prevent people from buying what they want, and this government has done nothing to fix it. Today I tabled a bill to give people more choice and to free Canadian beer, wine, and spirits. At this critical time, Mr. Speaker, will the government support this bill to help Canadian businesses and their workers?
Let it flow. The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for his question. He knows full well our government is committed to reducing barriers between provinces and territories. That is why we negotiated the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and we look forward to working with the members opposite to make sure we reduce red tape to create more opportunities for businesses and, more importantly, more choices for Canadians. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Steveston, Richmond East.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pandemic job losses and economic downturns have significantly impacted young Canadians. The Fall Economic Statement mentions phraseology like funding for new career opportunities and introducing additional measures. Well, here's the problem, Mr. Speaker. There's no details, no timelines, no assurances for our young people to know when and if they can get back to work. Will the minister end the platitudes and deliver details on job measures for young Canadians?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to appreciate the question, and that's why our government has been responding to the needs of youth. We know that COVID-19 has impacted all Canadians, and disproportionately certain segments, and young people are no exception. When it comes to the Canada Summer Jobs, jobs remain open, and I encourage young people to apply. When it comes to making sure that we had a moratorium on Canada student loans, we were right there to make sure interest was not accumulating. When it came to young professional entrepreneurs, we increased funding to Futurepreneur so that young people can continue being part of the solution. Mr. Speaker, our government will continue working on behalf of all Canadians, including students and youth, and I thank the member for his concern.
The Honourable Member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, last week I had the pleasure of visiting Curio Exploration Hub, an innovative new child activity centre opened by the mother of two young children, Stephanie Stout. Ms. Stout is hardworking, entrepreneurial woman who, unfortunately, through no fault of her own, found herself opening her business during the pandemic. Ms. Stout is struggling to survive and keep her business open. As a new business, she does not qualify for any of the current government assistance programs. Ms. Stout has put her heart, soul, and savings into this business. Why won't the government fix these flawed programs and help Ms. Stout?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me remind Canadians that our government has put in place an extensive safety net for Canadian businesses. I would argue no country in the world has put in place as extensive a safety net to support its businesses. The wage subsidy, the rent subsidy, CEBA. Now, Mr. Speaker, in putting together our programs, we need to balance integrity measures against the pressing need to support Canadian businesses. We are always looking at ways to improve the programs and are looking at particular cases that fall through the cracks.
The honourable member for Glengarry Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, last week, the Government of Canada made an announcement about an emergency loan for entrepreneurs through CEBA. Our government has already served several agricultural and other businesses in my riding of Glengarry Prescott Russell through the $40,000 loan with the possibility of writing off $10,000. Could the minister inform this House of other similar measures? The Honourable Minister of Small Businesses. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question. We announced that businesses can obtain a second emergency account loan of $20,000. We continue to support our SMEs in dealing with the pandemic by extending the wage subsidy and supporting them with our new rent assistance paid directly to tenants. We will continue to support businesses in Glengarry Prescott Russell.
Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are growing ever more concerned about the ability of the government to distribute vaccines in a timely manner. Disturbing news has emerged that hackers are working to disrupt vaccine supply chains. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the United States is sounding the alarm. The consequences of inaction will be fatal to Canadians. What is the government doing to protect our vaccine supply from cybersecurity threats?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, we're so fortunate to have embedded in the Public Health Agency of Canada Major General Fortin and 30 of his colleagues that have been working for months on our vaccine planning, including protecting the entire chain of vaccine delivery, including looking at the potential threats that exist to the vaccine security for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we will stop at nothing to ensure that vaccines are safe and protected for use in Canada.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
The Prime Minister has until the end of next week to comply with the will of this House to block Huawei from using our 5G networks to spy on Canadians and undermine our national security. All of our Five Eyes partners, the US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, they've all agreed to restrict or ban Huawei. And yet here in Canada, the Prime Minister dithers, no backbone. When will the Prime Minister grow a spine and say no to Huawei?
Just say no! The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the honourable colleague that we are right now under the process of doing a comprehensive review of how to deploy 5G in a safe and secure manner. We've been abundantly clear that we will continue to work with our national security experts as well as our allies to make sure that we proceed in a manner that protects Canadians, their safety and well-being. And we've been absolutely clear that we never have and never will compromise on the safety of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Chatham-Kent Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, a critical part of our economy involves businesses that make the machinery of business. We are world-class players in this field in southwestern Ontario, but face-to-face meetings are critical for Unifab, a Leamington employer that wants to expand, wants to double their size and add 150 good-paying jobs, but they need access to Michigan. His truckers can cross the border daily, but he, as owner, can't without spending 14 days away from his business. No one is suggesting we compromise safety, but when will rapid testing be accessible at all of Canada's borders?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, it was an opportunity to partner with the province of Alberta to pilot a study to understand the best way to test people at the border and combine that with quarantine. Because listen, at the end of the day, all Canadians expect us to ensure health safety at our borders, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We're looking at the evidence, we're looking at the research. We'll have more to say when the research study concludes.
The Honourable Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, during the pandemic, we've seen a rise in the number of hate-filled incidents where people have been harassed simply because of their race or religion. This is completely unacceptable and needs to stop. While some people view these incidents in isolation, we know that they have a broader impact on our wider community. I'm proud as the newly elected parliamentarian to represent the very diverse riding of York Centre. It's home to synagogues, mosques, and black churches, all of which are too often targets of anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, or anti-black hate-motivated crimes. I will always fight to ensure that all of my constituents can live, worship, and pray openly, peacefully, and without fear for their safety. Can the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness please update this House on what the government is doing to provide support for the security of all of our communities?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for York Centre for her excellent question and for her strong advocacy on behalf of her constituents and in the fight against hate. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or religion, should feel safe where they live, work, gather, and pray. And since forming government, we have quadrupled the funding under the Security Infrastructure Program to keep at-risk communities safe. And Mr. Speaker, just last week, as we announced in the Fall Economic Statement, we're investing an additional $13 million to protect communities at risk from hate-motivated crimes by providing not-for-profit organizations such as places as worship, schools, and community centers with funding. Our government will always support Canadians, ensuring that they can feel safe in their local communities, schools, and places of worship.
The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, when the pandemic hit and frontline workers and hospitals were short on PPE and sanitizer, Canadian small business owners stepped up. Distillers and brewers started making hand sanitizer. They saved lives, and many did it all for free. But when it came time for the government to order sanitizer, instead of giving these Canadian small businesses a chance to fill some orders, the Liberals sent over $500 million to multinational corporations. Can the minister responsible explain what Canadian small businesses need to do to get the support they deserve from this government?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear that we want to support Made in Canada solutions. That is why we had a call of action to businesses across the country, and many small businesses stepped up. And presently, approximately 50% of our procurement comes from Made in Canada solutions, from local businesses. That's up from virtually 0% in March. We're very proud of supporting Canadian businesses right across this country, and we'll continue to work with them and promote our Made in Canada programs going forward.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's very tempting to ask about the Parliamentary Budget Office report from this morning that made it clear that the TMX pipeline only makes money if all climate actions fail. But we have another hot topic, and that's the government's attempts to evade the Basel Convention on the shipment of plastics and other non-hazardous waste. There are very clear rules coming into effect January 1st for Basel, but Canada is evading them by contracting with the United States, a party not a member of the Basel Convention. What will the Minister of Environment do to plug this loophole?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. Canada takes its international obligations on the management of weight very seriously. Canada took a leadership role in negotiating the amendments to the Basel Convention, and we tabled these amendments this fall. The United States is not presently a party to the Basel Convention on the transboundary movement of waste. The agreement that we are putting into place with the United States will ensure that waste that moves between our countries is handled in a manner that is consistent with the Basel Convention. Mr. Speaker, through this agreement, we can ensure that waste that moves between our two countries will be managed in an environmentally sound way.
This will conclude the question period for today. I have a notice of a point of order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Look, 2 or 3 months ago, when a Conservative Member of Parliament on Twitter tweeted about far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about the relationship between George Soros and our Deputy Prime Minister, she apologized and deleted the tweet. So you can understand why I was surprised when I heard a Member of Parliament here in the chamber today repeated and peddled the same conspiracy theory again. So I want to give my honourable colleague the chance to withdraw his comments and apologize for what he said here today.
I thank the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for his intervention. I don't know that I see any other member rising. We'll take his point of order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if he doesn't...